right, welcome to the show, World Soccer Radio on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network. I'm Nick Eber. It's an absolute pleasure and a privilege to be with you as I am now back from my vacation. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, and lots of stuff going on, and you will find out about it in the next few weeks. Very exciting stuff happening in my life, in the genesis of what we're doing here. There's all sorts of cool stuff going on. So anyway, welcome to the show. An absolute pleasure to be with you each and every weeknight, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on the Sports Byline Network. And a big hello to our men and women in uniform listening on American Forces. It is a great privilege to be able to talk football to you each and every day right here on the Sports Byline Network. Big show today. Lots of stuff going on in the Premier League. We're going to talk about that. A massive disappointment for Spurs in the Europa League at White Hart Lane today. I'm going to talk a little bit with you about the managerial situation in professional football. And we're also not going to be exclusively in Europe today. We're going to come back and continue our Major League Soccer preview. We're going to look at the Seattle Sounders, and we're going to be joined by the voice of the Sounders, Ross Fletcher, who will be joining us right here on the show in about 10 or 15 minutes. So be sure to stay with me for that. Ross is always a terrific guest. 800-878-PLAY, 800-878-PLAY if you want to give me a call here in the studio. Love to hear from you. This show works best when you participate. Another way you can reach us, of course, is via Twitter, at World Soccer Radio, at World Soccer Radio. And I have the Twitter feed in front of me, so I am ready to talk about your little snippets, 140 characters of brilliance that you want to send me. We'll talk about them here on the show. All right, that's what's on the agenda today. And, of course, anything else you want to come up with, we can chat about it here. If you want to talk Champions League football, we can do that. And, of course, we do have some mammoth matches coming up in the Premier League. And, unfortunately, we'll not be on the air live with you tomorrow. We have to take a day off tomorrow to take care of some housekeeping business. So we will still I will talk with Ross a little bit about the two big matches. Of course, Old Trafford, Manchester United will be hosting Liverpool, and the huge, massive North London derby also at White Hart Lane. Will Spurs be able to have any form of showing after today's embarrassment against Benfica? All right, 800-878-PLAY, 800-878-PLAY. Stick with us here. We're going to go to commercial break. Be right back after this. Now is a great time, by the way, to use the loo if you have to. If you filled up in fluids and you got to, let it out, this is a great time. So when you come back, you're not going to miss any of the great content we have for you today on World Soccer Radio. All right, be right back after this. All right, so wait a minute. Danny is not here with me today, so there's absolutely no reason on the planet that I have to listen to electronic dance music. What is this, Tiesto or, I don't know, Swedish House Mafia, whatever? No, not for me. Give me back something with drums, a guitar, bass, vocals. There, thank you. Oh, beautiful. You know, once you fall into bad habits like playing electronic dance music in this show, it's very bad. It's very difficult to get out of them. All right, there we go, a little Pink Floyd. Welcome back to the show, World Soccer Radio. I'm Nick Geber. So much going on in the world of football. Some of it is insanity, and some of it is sort of what you figured was going to happen anyway, and that's why we love football of the global sort. But I do want to start off this segment by saying congratulations to Rangers, Glasgow Rangers in Scotland, who have tied up Scottish League One on their very long trek back to the Scottish Premier League. I just want to say that next season they'll be playing in the Scottish Championship, and then the season after that they will no doubt make it back to the Scottish Premier League. Of course, they have managed to go through the Scottish League One season without losing a single match. Now, I ask you this, how ridiculous is it there's a Scottish League One and a Scottish Championship? I mean, does any of this make any sense to you? I mean, Scottish football has degenerated into such a laughingstock across the world that they have all of these league structures and they have their championship. And they're trying to mirror what goes on in England. And it's a joke. It's like comparing professional women's football to the professional men's football of the Premier League. You just can't do it. I'm not saying Rangers aren't a good team or Celtic aren't a good team or there are a few really good teams in Scotland. There are. But look at what's happened to Celtic because of their stubbornness, because of their desire to, shall we say, twist the knife with Rangers, is that basically their own league is essentially a reserve league for them. It's a practice league. They pitch up for their SPL games so they can get a little practice for the Champions League. That's it. I mean, that is an appalling state for a league that was once a truly great European league. An appalling state for a country that has really been instrumental in the growth of world football throughout its inception. I think it's a shame. But quite frankly, they have no one to blame but themselves for it. I'd like to see Rangers back. I'd like to see some semblance of normality. Those old firm derbies, about the only thing worth watching in Scottish football. And we had Bobby McMahon on a few days ago on the show, and he was saying that Rangers, although they're climbing back to the pinnacle of Scottish football, as a team, they've really been decimated by this, by the financial problems, by the the relegation down the league structure. That it'll take a long time before they are back providing that competition that the two big clubs in Scotland need. Nevertheless, 40,000 people showed up for the last match that Rangers played. Think about that. Scottish League One, 40,000 people came. I don't care what you say about Rangers. I don't care what you say about Scottish football, and I've just said my piece about it. That is an astounding number. And that just shows the passion that the supporters have for their club. I wish we saw that same passion in other parts of the world, but we don't. But nonetheless, it is to be lauded, applauded, and quite frankly, looked at as a miracle about what's gone on at Rangers despite all the problems they've had. All right, well, I do want to turn our attention, if we can, to a couple of other topics. Today, an appalling match against Benfica by Tottenham at White Hart Lane. They lose to the current Portuguese champions or current Portuguese league toppers 3-1 at White Hart Lane. Look, this is a team that was expected to really challenge for the Premier League. This is a team that Daniel Levy thought, with the 100-and-something million that he got for Gareth Bale, they went out, they bought 8, 9 players for it, and I'll give you the number here exactly. Quite honestly, I don't have one of these incredible photographic memories. My memory is being clouded with age and other things, so I have to look it up. But I'll tell you, 8 or 9 players. I mean, they spent the entire Gareth Bale money on new players. So there were expectations that this team was going to challenge for the Champions League. For the title. And Champions League qualification was considered a shoo-in. And look at where they are now. They're currently in 5th place in the table. In fact, if you're watching this broadcast, by the way, if you're listening to it and say, "Oh, I wish I could see Nick. I love to see the male model that is Nick Geber." You can do that, by the way. You can go to watchwsr.com. We provide a live stream. Let's take a look at the table, though. You can see right there, obviously Chelsea top of the table, 29 points, 29 games, 66 points. Liverpool a game in hand. Arsenal a game in hand. Of course, Man City with 3 games in hand in 4th place. And in 5th place, 4 points behind Man City in 4th spot, yet 3 games back in terms of the amount of games that they played, sits Spurs. So if you look at Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City, of those 4 teams, I would say 3 teams were expected to be there. I would imagine that nobody in their right mind thought Man United were going to have quite the catastrophe season that they've had. So Spurs, the expectation with the Gareth Bale money was that Spurs were going to be on a footing that was going to allow them to knock off a Chelsea, an Arsenal, a City, a United in order to make the top 4 and challenge for the title. Instead, they've had an absolutely rotten season. And yes, they are in 5th place. They got rid of Andre Villas-Boas. They brought in Tim Sherwood. Tim Sherwood, by the way, if you're interested to know this, his record actually is pretty much exactly the same this time into his managerial run as Andre Villas-Boas was. So one can't say that, he came in, he had a little honeymoon period that went very well, but it's kind of been, a big failure since then for Tim Sherwood. And punctuated today by an absolutely appalling showing with a bunch of players, frankly, who either aren't good enough, whose heart isn't in it. And, you can ask the question about Tottenham, why did they go out and buy 8, 9, 10 players? It wasn't quite that many, it was 8 players, I think, when they should have just taken that 100 million and bought 3 30 million pound players that could really have made a difference for this team, as opposed to players like Lewis Holtby. Came in and left, didn't work out. Christian Eriksen, I think, has been a big disappointment. You can go down the list and you can look, but the big scorer for them is still good old Emmanuel Adebayor. They're problems, and I suspect after today's rout at the hands of Benfica, that Tim Sherwood's 18-month contract will result in 6 months on the job and a 12-month payout as he gets fired at the end of the season. And what's fascinating, and we'll talk a little bit to Ross about this, because he does like to talk Premier League, how poorly the new managers taking over quote-unquote struggling clubs have actually fared. The new manager's struggling horribly. We're going to look at all of that here on the show. By the way, love to hear from you on Twitter, at World Soccer Radio, at World Soccer Radio. Let me know how you feel about it. Are you happy? If you look at the new managers, Fulham, Felix Magath, Cardiff, of course, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Sunderland, Gus Poyet, Swansea, Gary Monk, Spurs, we just talked about Tim Sherwood, West Bromwich. What were West Brom doing? Firing Steve Clarke. Come on. Pepe Mel has yet to win a game. West Bromwich Albion, they are headed down to the championship. There's no doubt about it. I'm going to talk about the relegation. Cardiff, Sunderland, Fulham, West Bromwich Albion. These teams are all struggling. There you have it right there. West Brom, 25 points. Cardiff, 25 points. Sunderland, 24 points. Fulham, 21 points. What do all of these clubs have in common? They pulled the trigger on their old managers, brought in new managers who were going to save the day. And look at what happened. All right, speaking of managers, coming up here in just a few minutes, we're going to speak to Ross Fletcher, the voice of the Seattle Sounders. And there's a manager, surprisingly enough, who, after 5 seasons at Seattle, Ziggy Schmidt, he's under pressure. He's got to put in that incredible season, or maybe good old Ziggy, who I happen to have a great deal of personal affection for. I know Ziggy very well. A great guy. Maybe he's on his way out. I don't know. We'll ask Ross. He'll tell us all about it and about the season ahead for the Seattle Sounders. And, of course, we will continue our Premier League and European football discussion and look at those absolutely brilliant matches on Sunday. Be right back after this. World Soccer Radio, Sports Byline, USA Radio Network.
Are you a business? 885.
All right, welcome back to the show, World Soccer Radio. Sports Byline USA, Radio Network. Big hello to men and women in uniform listening on American forces. And by the way, from what I'm hearing, pretty soon I'll have to say big hello to men, women, and transgender members of the U.S. Armed Forces. Boy, have things changed since I was in the service. But heard today, apparently, something going on there about transgender. No reason that they couldn't serve. And so there you have it. It'll make for a more interesting introduction to the show as I give my shout-outs to everyone. By the way, I hope you're enjoying the show. You can see the show live if you're listening to us on the radio. You can see the show live at our website at www.watchwsr.com. That's watchwsr as in watchworldsoccerradio.com. Of course, if you're listening on the Sports Byline, affiliate station of the Sports Byline Network, American Forces, or you're listening to us on tunein.com. Of course, we're very happy to be on iHeartRadio, one of our newest outlets. So you be sure to make us, this show, a regular part of your daily pulse. And I believe then what happens, you get the show when you log on or what have you. I don't know. I'm not that technologically savvy, to be honest. All right, well, we're talking about managers in trouble. Talked about a little bit about the bottom of the Premier League table, how ridiculous it is that the bottom four teams all have new managers that were supposedly going to be the cavalry, the knights in shining armor, coming in to save the day, the struggles that they're all having. Another manager, though, a continent away, has been at his seat, and a rather large seat at that, for the last 5 years, but is coming under intense pressure to deliver the big kahuna, to deliver the goods, is Siggy Schmidt. Joining us on the guest line, the voice of the Seattle Sounders, Mr. Ross Fletcher. Ross, a lot of pressure on Siggy this year? Do we have Ross?
Yeah, I think there probably is pressure. There's always pressure on every single success. This will be the 6th year of Siggy Schmidt as head coach of Seattle Sounders. He's won MLS Cup with 2 different teams, with LA and Columbus, and now he wants to win it with Seattle. There was the quote from majority owner Joe Roth last year after the Sounders didn't get over the line. He said, "We will stop at nothing to win MLS Cup," and that was something that they decided would be a priority for them, bringing in the likes of Clint Dempsey with big money, and so, of course, that brings big expectations, and Siggy Schmidt is well aware that this soccer-loving city is craving the ultimate prize in Major League Soccer, which is MLS Cup. But his approach hasn't changed. He never gets too high in victory, never gets too low in defeat. So he's, I think, like every coach, tweaking his approach this year, but he knows the expectations are pretty huge in this city.
Well, Ross, let's talk a bit about some of those moves that have been made. Obviously, the Dempsey-Obafemi pairing is the one everybody's looking for, but there have been a lot of losses, some key losses. I mean, Eddie Johnson, Rosales has gone, just Gasperning is out. I mean, some players that I think people are surprised were moved on.
Yeah, I think, Nick, that's the reason that Seattle have made these bold moves in the offseason, because they thought, with the squad we had, as good, as star-studded as it wasn't quite the right mix. It wasn't the right chemistry. And, of course, the financials, with there being a $3 million team salary cap in Major League Soccer, some players asking for much more money, it wouldn't work. So 13 players out from the end of last season, 13 players in. And as you mentioned, the captain, Mario Rosales, has gone to Chivas USA. Yeah. I'd say he lost probably half a step last year, and although he put up numbers of 3 goals and 8 assists, he wasn't the same creative force that he was in the previous 2 years. The goalkeeping situation, again, Michael Sperling started out very strongly for Seattle, but made some high-profile errors going down the stretch last year. Stefan Frey comes in from Toronto, a guy that Siggy Schmidt had been scouting since high school. And you've got to remember, he's had 5 years at Toronto since. Clint Dempsey, Obafemi Martins, bedding into their first really full seasons now with Seattle. And they brought in some MLS experience elsewhere. Kenny Cooper scored 18 goals in New York, and also with FC Dallas a few years ago. So a lot of changes there. And just high.
Yeah, I mean, Kenny Cooper, Chad Marshall. I mean, I think those are some interesting acquisitions. But, Ross, it's fascinating because I watched Clint Dempsey playing with Fulham when he did get a chance as he went back on loan. He just doesn't look the same player that was at Fulham, now 2 seasons ago? Or 3. So pardon me. That was at Fulham 3 seasons ago. Then went to Spurs, had a rough season, and then obviously came to Seattle. Is it possible? Do you think there's a possibility that could be a bust move?
I think it's too early to tell what the legacy will be of Clint Dempsey, and I don't think we can judge him particularly on those 9 games that he played at Fulham. He went into a pretty difficult situation there, as you mentioned already, with the managerial merry-go-round in the Premier League right now. He had 3 different coaches during that 9-game spell where Fulham didn't win a game. He didn't score, and he was more often the first 11. So I think it'll take a long time before you can work out exactly the level of success that Clint Dempsey's move to Seattle has brought him and the team. One thing is for sure, like Ziggy Schmidt knows he is under pressure to perform this year. And he's coming into the Sounders in a very different mindset as he was last year, when he was lauded as a mid-late season super signing, was injured for most of it, didn't have a full pre-season, and then goes back, of course, to England, as we mentioned, with Fulham. So he needs a fast start, that's for sure. But I think with the level of talent he's got, and at 31, he is going to give a lot. And I would say wait and see on Clint Dempsey. One thing's for sure, wherever he's gone, he's scored goals. The time at Fulham didn't produce them, but everywhere else, he's been proven to hit the back of the net. And I think, I'm pretty certain he will do that. Look for 10 to 15 goals this year from Clint Dempsey in the Sounders uniform.
Well, I mean, I think that would be great for Major League Soccer, be great for the U.S. men's national team as well. Obviously, he needs to get that scoring touch back and not have any confidence issues, particularly going into a World Cup cycle or going into the World Cup. As I look at this team, though, Ross, I mean, there's a couple of issues. You talked about Clint Dempsey scoring 10 or 15 goals. You talked about Kenny Cooper and the goals that he scored in New York. The question I have for you is, how critical is it that all of these forwards, whether it's a Dempsey, Marco Papa, Obafemi Martins, Kenny Cooper, they all got to work together? They've got to get the goals for Seattle. Otherwise, it could be a really tough season, particularly with the question marks between the pipes.
Yeah, I think the chemistry is first off the big issue for the Sounders with making so many changes. They've got to be able to gel together and work as a unit. And they did that against Sporting Kansas City in their opening game of the season last Saturday. They won with virtually the last kick of the game in the 94th minute from another new signing, Chad Barrett, who came off the bench to score a goal. So I think, scoring by committee will be very important this year. Obafemi Martins, Clint Dempsey, you mentioned Kenny Cooper there. Marco Papa, another new signing coming back from the Dutch League and a year with Herenveen, that he will chip in with a few goals, possibly from set pieces. And so too Lamar Nagel, who was the surprise package of last year. Homegrown guy from Federal Way, in his 3rd spell with the team. 8 goals, really important last year. 8 goals all at home, chipping in. And if Martin stays fit, he's capable of 10 to 15 goals. Clint Dempsey too. And the rest of the guys, I think like any team, if you're going to be successful, like Portland were last year, you have to step up to the plate in numbers. I think Portland, 5 of their guys scored 8 goals or more. So, there is expectation on, I think, all of them to chip in. But they do have the firepower. It's all about whether they can gel quickly.
Yeah, Ross, you talk about chemistry, though, and I see a lot of similarities between what Spurs did with the sale of Gareth Bale and bringing in, about this many new players with that money. And look at the issues they've had, despite the fact that some of these players are very good. Just working together, finding the system that works, having a structure to put them in has been really elusive at White Hart Lane. And I think the fact that Siggy is an incumbent manager, and as you pointed out, this is his 6th season, if there is anyone, we're going to see what his managerial mettle is, how he can take this many new players in a club and make them tick fairly immediately, because there isn't a lot of time to waste.
Yeah, I think what you'll see, and I refer back to that tweaking I mentioned of Ziggy Schmidt's philosophy coming into this year, is a slight change in the Sounders formation. They've been pretty much a 4-4-2 team for many years, and it's worked very well. But knowing the players that he wanted to bring in and the players that he has got now at his disposal, you'll see more, I think, of a 4-2-3-1 this year with Obafemi Martins up front.
Yeah.
Clint Dempsey with more of a free role behind Martins, and then the protectors in the midfield of Ozzy Alonso and Brad Evans. Alonso, a long-time club MVP, Brad Evans making his way with the U.S. national team now, and a very good bet to go to the World Cup in Brazil this year. So I think that's a slightly different style, and it's very much, for me, round pegs in round holes, and that is something that Seattle, I think, have maybe missed a little bit in the last few years, particularly when you think of the balance in midfield. What they do have now with Marco Papa is a creative left-sided midfielder with a really good left foot. He adds the balance that Seattle have been lacking over the last couple of years. They haven't really been able to use a genuine left-footed player. The idea was that Steve Zakuani would be the long-time incumbent in that position, but he was injured for the last 2.5 years, and now has been traded to Portland. So they have more balance this year, and I think that will be an important part for them. And that slight tweak in formation, which seems to be the fashion in Major League Soccer these days, playing with two protective midfielders and the three in front with the one striker, that it'll be a matchup. And as I say, coming back to that Whirly Dean chemistry, seeing whether it will work. If it doesn't, they do have a deep squad to try and change things around if need be.
All right, we're going to go to break. I'm speaking with Russ Fletcher, the voice of the Seattle Sounders. Of course, the topic, the Seattle Sounders. When we come back after break, I will talk a little bit more about the Sounders and then talk a little Premier League. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back after these messages. All right, welcome back to the show, World Soccer Radio, Sports Byline USA Radio Network. I am Nick Eber. I was before the break, and I believe I am still Nick Eber after the break, although maybe I need to see my therapist a little later on tonight. Let's go back to the guest line and rejoin my special guest, the voice of the Seattle Sounders, Mr. Ross Fletcher. Ross, you still with me? I believe I have Ross. Do I? Do I still have Ross? No? Maybe we don't have Ross. Okay.
Well, I'll find him.
All right. Well, we'll get Ross back. Apparently, we lost Ross. Okay. So when we come back, when Ross comes back, we're going to get back into a little bit more MLS. In the meantime, though, I wanted to go back to Europe for a minute and look at Manchester City, because the situation with the table is, look, you always would rather have points in hand than games in hand. And I don't think there's any better example of that than what's happening right now with Manchester City. There becomes a mental block that when you're sitting on fourth, even though you have 3 games in hand, the other teams start to get boosted because they're ahead of you in the tables. And you still have to go and win those games. So I tell you what, we do have Ross back. So when we'll get to this discussion with Ross, because I'm interested to get his take. But let's go back to the guest line and rejoin Ross Fletcher. Ross, we lost you for a minute then, but we sent out our own rescue team who brought you back.
Yeah, it's amazing. Modern technology, even on 4G lines these days.
Yeah, it is surprising. All right, Ross, a couple of the things I want to talk about, maybe a bit more general about Major League Soccer. The ratings for the opening matches at Major League Soccer were exceeded everybody's expectations. And Ross, you and I both come from the UK, and we see that football is about so much more than just what happens on the 90 minutes on the pitch. That it's the week round story. It's the it's not so much the Saturday or the Sunday, but it's the Monday through Friday. It's the tabloids. It's the backstory. And MLS, Ross, you're fairly new here, and I can say that over the years, MLS has always been very, very hesitant to sort of open the door and let journalists in and let those stories out. They've always been very much interested in controlling the story and controlling the narrative. But over the last few years, they've certainly loosened up in that. And of course, as we've had more teams and more people are following these teams, journalists will be journalists and those stories get out. But we have had an absolutely rocking season in the off-season in Major League Soccer. A lot of big stories, of course, with the World Cup, with Michael Bradley coming back. I mean, with all sorts of stuff going on, with Beckham and new expansion teams. It's been fascinating stuff. Ross, how much do you think that has helped focus in interest on MLS coming into this new season?
I think it has to be a positive. Ned, you mentioned the big stories. David Beckham very much saying that I will come back into the league. In Miami, that big area of the southeast of the country that MLS is craving to get back into after a false start in its very early days in the mid to late 90s and the early 2000s. That is significant about the direction that Major League Soccer is going. Atlanta definitely wants to get in. Of course, New York City FC and Orlando will be coming in next year. They're already well set up. So the momentum is there. The groundwork significantly has been laid. And now you're looking at 80% of Major League Soccer teams having their own soccer-specific stadium, which is just huge for the sport. In England, of course, you think, well, of course, your team is going to have a football-specific stadium. But in Major League Soccer, that has been a long, hard battle. So there's been great momentum in the last 6 months towards building that even further.
Although, Ross, I'll have to say, not in Seattle. I mean, Seattle doesn't have a soccer-specific stadium. It looks like one when it televises, but it is, in fact, an NFL stadium. It's one of the very few examples where NFL stadiums work in the smaller confines of an MLS game, obviously because it shoots so well, the top's blocked off and the fans are so vocal and passionate. But again, no soccer-specific stadium in Seattle, yet one of the poster children for the league.
Well, in some ways, it actually is a soccer-specific stadium, because there is an argument to say that way back in the early 90s, when the decision was made to build what is now CenturyLink Field. The vote would not have passed the city council if it wasn't for the soccer contingent saying, yes, we will have this stadium and share it with the NFL team, Seattle Seahawks. And that vote helped get it built, essentially. And in the early days, there was a mandate that the stadium would be built with soccer in mind, and that it would have a grass field, of course, with the rain teeming down every single day, it seems, in the Pacific Northwest, and with the amount of sunlight the stadium gets because of the huge arches on the stands, it means that turf is a much more viable option. But it was certainly built with soccer in mind. But you're right, it's not an entirely soccer-specific stadium, but certainly it works because it was built to work. Then you have the other side of things with the new stadiums coming up at New York, with New York Red Bulls, which is soccer-specific, Sporting Kansas City, which is the other huge success stories of the last few years. They were selling 7,000, 8,000 tickets at a cavernous Arrowhead Stadium before they moved to Sporting Park, which is just soccer, and now it's 20,000 each and every game. And so, that is growing. And to bring back your earlier point, too, the signings of the likes of Michael Bradley and Jermaine Defoe,
of course,
at Toronto FC, even Maurice Edu at Philadelphia Union, coming back from the Premier League in Stoke City, says that this league is growing, that American players are coming back and getting paid more money, which is more attractive for them, but also the European players coming are not necessarily now just 32, 30 of age looking for a final paycheck. They are like Michael Bradley, 26 years old, Jermaine Defoe, 31, Clint Dempsey, 30. These players still have a lot left in the tank, and MLS is moving out of that phase of being seen in Europe as a last paycheck for a lot of guys.
Well, I mean, maybe seen by agents and players as a viable option, but if you listen to any of the European media, I mean, the way they look down at Major League Soccer is incredible to me. I mean, the incredulous opinions and almost outrage that Jermaine Defoe would choose to go to Canada to play football in Major League Soccer rather than staying in the UK and staying in England and playing in the Premier League. People just didn't understand it. Of course, for Jermaine, it was a very personal choice. I think a good choice. But maybe we'll see if that will affect his World Cup campaign. Ross, we've just got a few minutes left, and I want to get into a couple of points about the Premier League because I know you follow it very closely. Let's talk about Pellegrini at Manchester City. It's very possible that it's going to be League Cup as the trophy haul this year for Manchester City. It's looking more and more like that might be all they're taking away from this year. Do you think that is enough for Pellegrini to retain his job, or do you think they might make another move?
Well, I think Manuel Pellegrini has come in and done a terrific job at the start of the year. You could almost sense that every time Manchester City stepped on the field, they were going to score 4, 5, even 6, maybe 7 goals, which was incredible. And I think Manchester City fans were treated royally. But as you say, having been knocked out recently by the FA Cup, in the FA Cup by low league Wigan, and then the Champions League exit just to Barcelona yesterday, Premier League or bust for Manuel Pellegrini. And there was a statistic that came out only a couple of days ago, I think, saying that more than half of managers in the top 4 tiers in English football had changed their jobs in the last 12 months alone, something like 52%. Because if you don't get success instantly, you are gone. I'm not quite so sure with Manuel Pellegrini, but certainly he has got it all to do now, and he can focus his attention on the Premier League to try and wrestle that title from what looks like being Chelsea's right now. Otherwise, that guy will be under severe pressure.
Yeah, he really is. And it does certainly look like Chelsea's title to lose. Although, we said that about Arsenal not too long ago. And, this is the year, I think, when Arsene Wenger is going to have to do some soul-searching about maybe having missed his opportunity for that league title in this sort of strange window that this year has become. As has, say, David Moyes has to look and say, what did he do wrong? Or what happened at Man United that they lost their top 4 dominance or their top dominance? So many interesting stories, Ross, and we obviously can't get into all of them just a few minutes we have left. I do want to look at the 2 big matches on Sunday. We've got Old Trafford, where Manchester United are going to be hosting Liverpool. How do you see that match going down, and do you think United will get a home win here, or how do you predict this match will unfold?
Well, I think it's incredible. I read somewhere, I think only yesterday, that some people are considering Liverpool as favourites going into that match. Liverpool as favourites at Old Trafford, the multiple Premier League defending champions. And you think how times have changed. And that, for me, is based largely on the SAS there, Suarez and Sturridge. Luis Suarez has been simply irresistible this season. With his back against the wall, with whatever's happened in the past with his disciplinary problems, he has come through and performed magnificently this year. And when Danny Sturridge is fit, he too is sharp. It was a game at Southampton 2 weeks ago, I think it was, where you just saw how much better Liverpool have got this season, where Suarez was in on the inside right channel, had a really good chance to shoot a goal himself from about 14 yards. Instead, he wanted to square it to Sturridge. He didn't score, and you thought Suarez maybe should have shot, particularly for a guy of his aplomb. And that says to me, this is a team at work. And Liverpool under Brendan Rodgers have really been moulded into a cohesive attacking team. Mignolet in goal has, I think, shored them up. And then Manchester United, well, that was a team of not necessarily superstars, but under David Moyes, that team has crumbled. And so I would not be surprised to see Liverpool come away with a victory. Moyes is beleaguered. Manchester United are beleaguered. The title went a long time ago, but Liverpool, I think, genuinely believe they still have a chance of picking up some silverware for the first time in a very long time, and I believe they can do it on Sunday.
Yeah, it is strange at Man United. You know, everyone's talking about this new impetus, this new momentum they've got, but, you know, we're talking about victories over Crystal Palace and, you know, an absolutely horrendous West Bromwich Albion. We saw this before a couple of months ago when supposedly everything was right. They started to beat some really bad teams, but against the good teams, they've still been floundering. Ross, literally 1 minute, White Hart Lane, massive match, Arsenal-Spurs, North London derby. You know, I think if I wouldn't be surprised, by the way, if Tim Sherwood gets the boot after this match if Spurs lose.
Yeah, I think if you look at that game in its totality, you think no Mesut Ozil now with that hamstring injury. Aaron Ramsey's been missing for a while. Have Arsenal finally lost their edge? Tim Sherwood with Spurs has come out in this week and really given his own players a rollicking and saying he's not their babysitter, he's their coach. So it looks like two teams that aren't necessarily teetering, but desperately need a win. And there's no better way to do it than against your most feared, most hated, most loathed local rivals. I just wonder whether Spurs have the edge right now, and that will heap the pressure on Arsene Wenger.
Ross Fletcher, an absolute pleasure. A great talking Major League Soccer and, of course, the Premier League with you. We'll have to do it again soon. And good luck in the coming season. Hope Ziggy gets it done this year.
Top man, good to talk. Thanks, Nick.
All right, cheers, Ross. All right, we're going to go to break on World Soccer Radio. Nick Eber with you. Sports Byline USA going to go away, pay some bills, and we'll be right back to wrap it up here on the Sports Byline Network. By the way, just a reminder, I'm with you each and every weeknight, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, talking the beautiful game on the only place that matters, right here on this very network. All right, going to be right back after this. Stay with me. We still got more, I promise. All right, folks, welcome back. Nick Eber with you. World Soccer Radio. Just a couple programming notes. Tomorrow, we usually do our Premier League preview show every Friday, as you know, but tomorrow there will actually not be a new show. Danny and I have a little housekeeping we got to do, and I don't mean a broom and a vacuum. You know, we've got to take care of some stuff, do some equipment upgrades and the like, so we're not going to do a new show for you tomorrow. Starting next week, it'll be, you know, just like your bowels in the morning. We'll be regular like clockwork, I promise. So I'm going to tell you, I think United-Liverpool will be a draw, 1-1, as much as I want Liverpool to beat them 9-0. I think that'll be a draw. And I believe, actually, that Arsenal will go to Spurs and get a win. I think Spurs right now are that bad. Those are my predictions. I'd love to hear yours. Twitter at World Soccer Radio, Twitter at World Soccer Radio. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/World Soccer Radio if you would like. We are, all over the place. You can find us on the web at www.watchwsr, and you can also see all of these broadcasts that we do, the video feeds of them. You can see our beautiful mugs. All right, I'd like to thank everyone in San Francisco for making it happen. I'd like to thank your patience while I was gone and lending your support to Danny Page, who does such a great job both co-hosting with me and hosting in my absence. Thank you for supporting him as much as you do and continue to do so. He's a great guy, and it's wonderful to have him with us here on the show. Okay, folks, that's going to wrap it up for me today. Just a reminder, Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time will be our next news show. We will be back on the air tomorrow with this show again, in case you missed it, on the Sports Byline USA Network. Hope you enjoyed that. I'd like to thank Ross Fletcher of the Seattle Sounders for coming on. It's always great to talk Major League Soccer as we've been doing all week and will continue to do throughout the MLS season. All right, stay tuned here on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network. Coming up, one of the absolute greats of the game. I'm talking about the broadcasting game. It's Ron Barr. I'll be back with you on Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, cheers.
Have a good night, man.
Thank you, and
talk to you next week, right?